Hi and welcome. I'm trying to learn space science. Today, Asteroid, Meteoroid, Meteor and Meteorite. And after we've done it, we're going to do ECU Tendon training. If you participate in the ECU Tendon training, then it's better at your own risk. Now, I made the decision to look for additional resources, and I found something written on the webpage of the BBC, which is a big television, mostly broadcaster in the United Kingdom, and they've written something about it. What is the difference between a meteorite, a meteor, an asteroid, and a comet? What is an asteroid? Asteroids are big chunks of rock which float through space and orbit the Sun. They are much smaller than planets and can vary in size. The biggest, called Ceres, is around 940 kilometers wide. It's pretty wide, the distance we have that, right? I don't know, but it's a big list, but it's once from the United States, from Canada down to Mexico almost. It's a little less, I think. But around that distance, or for Australia north to south, it's also a bit more than 1,000 kilometers. I don't know where no good distances like that. Once the distance from northern France to southern France, something around that is 1,000 kilometers. So, and this asteroid is that big, that Ceres. And that's twice as big as the Grand Canyon. But they don't mean that from one side to the other side, they mean, I think, length. And some of the smaller asteroids can be around 6 meters in size. Now, here's a picture of a Lutetia asteroid. That is the Lutetia asteroid. Now, asteroids. They are, of course, much smaller than a planet, even though the Ceres is 1,000 kilometers wide, but it's still smaller than a planet. So asteroids, and most of them are in the asteroid belt. Here we're having another picture of the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. We heard about it. So that is the solar system. In the middle there's the Sun, with the yellow thing there. And then there are Mercury, Venus, and then Earth, the third planet, there the green one. And then there's Mars as the fourth planet, and as the fifth planet, Jupiter. And between Mars and Jupiter, there's this asteroid belt, this purple finger. There are all these millions of asteroids. Okay, asteroids, they are not as big as planets, but they have quite some size. And now meteorites, sometimes asteroids can bump into each other. Now we have these millions of asteroids, and of course they can have a crash. They can bump into each other in space, and this can mean small pieces break off. These smaller pieces of rock are called meteorites. Meteorites can be as small as a grain of sand or as large as a meter across. Okay. Now in this asteroid belt, there are all these millions of asteroids. Now it can happen that they bump into each other, and then a piece can break off. That's so good to see. Where a little piece can break off of this asteroid. Okay, asteroids are bigger. Not as big as a planet, but they are bigger. And meteorites, they are smaller. That's the difference. And now these smaller pieces, of course, can go now towards the Sun, because they had a collision and now they can get off their street. They can get straight and they can go towards the Sun. But the main thing is they are smaller. So we're having asteroid and meteoroid. And now the names start to make a bit sense. It is asteroid. So we're having asteroid with a D written, and then we're having meteoroid, basically the same word, again with a D. So we're having asteroid and meteoroid. Now we're coming to the meteors. What is a meteor? If a meteorite gets close enough to the Earth that it enters, then it enters our atmosphere. It begins to burn up and fall to the ground. This burning trail is known as a meteor. They are usually bright in color and leave beautiful trails of light in the sky. Okay, what I'm meaning is now, if such a meteorite is just going through space, but if it enters now Earth's atmosphere, it has restriction against the air, which we have it already, and when it burns and it leaves its tail behind. and they are now known as shooting stars. Some people call them shooting stars, but they are actually not stars, just tiny chunks of rock burning up in the Earth's atmosphere. If a meteorite rock doesn't completely burn up as it falls to Earth, the rock that is left behind is called a meteorite. All the meteorites and comets both create bright trails through our night sky. They are very different. Okay, now we're gonna come to the comets. That was the question. Okay, there are the asteroids in the asteroid belt, and they can bump into each other, and then there breaks off a little piece, and that is a meteoroid. So asteroid is a big one, meteorite. And such a meteorite can come into the atmosphere of the Earth. I think also an asteroid come into the atmosphere of Earth. And then it would be a meteor, just because it's just differently called. It's now a meteor because it's now shooting through Earth's atmosphere. Most of these smaller meteors, if they have that size, or whatever, they are burning up because of all the friction, they are just burning. But if they make it to the ground and hit the ground, they are meteorites. So asteroids, the small meteorites, they can happen to come into Earth's atmosphere. Meteors are called shooting stars because they leave a burning tail behind, shooting stars, and if they hit the Earth, meteorite. What is a comet? Like asteroids, comets also float through space orbiting the Sun. So just like an asteroid, the comets are orbiting all around the Sun, over and over again. However, comets are made up of ice and dust. That is the difference. Not rock, like a giant dirty snowball are they. Okay, an asteroid is a rock, like a mountain, it is stone. A comet is ice and dust. It's just a lot of, like a dirty snowball, do we say. So just a bit more or whatever, just dust and frozen water. So not a rock, just dust and ice. As the comet moves towards the Sun, the heat begins to melt the ice and dust, turning it from a solid to a gas. Now, if a comet orbiting the Sun comes, just going to say that, too close to the Sun, when it gets warm and the ice melts and it becomes water, or it directly comes from the ice to the vapor, whatever, the ice melts. And that, now because it melts, it isn't sticking together and it flows away, but because the thing is moving very fast, it leaves a tail behind it, consisting out of this melted ice with water now or vapor, and also some dust which was trapped inside of the frozen ice, but because the ice is melted, the dust is also now released. And this creates a beautiful bright trail. You can see a comet traveling through the sky when it is very far away from the Earth. However, you can only see a meteor when it burns up in our atmosphere. Meteors can be only seen if they're a bit bigger in the atmosphere, and shooting stars if a meteorite passes Earth 1,000 kilometers away, we can't see it because it's just dark. We can only see a meteorite if it happens to be in the Earth's atmosphere as a meteor, because when it has friction, only if it is below 100 kilometers, 50 kilometers in the Earth's atmosphere, then we can see it as a shooting star, this meteor. Comets can be seen even when they are very far from Earth, because they're leaving behind them these ice and dust. Now here, some comets take a few years to travel around the Sun. However, some take much longer, and ours only ever appear once. Now here, I don't know if it's a picture or illustration, but a bit like that looks a comet. Now there's just this piece of ice and rock. It travels through space, and the sun is shining onto it, melting the ice and the dust is left behind. So asteroids are just a piece of rock, and now they can't be seen because they don't leave a trail behind. Comets can be seen traveling around the Sun because they sometimes leave behind these ice and dust. Okay, now we have it all. There are the asteroids and the asteroid belt, most of them. Asteroid belt, if they bump into each other and a little piece goes away or floats around there, that is a meteorite. So asteroids and meteors are just smaller. And if such a meteorite happens to come into the atmosphere of Earth, it is a meteor, but also called shooting star. And if it manages to hit the Earth, then it is a meteorite. And a comet is just the same as an asteroid, but it consists not out of rock, but out of ice and dust. And because it is not a solid rock, it leaves behind a trace of melted water and vapor and the dust which was released now. I think now we have it pretty good. And that means that was the space science part. If you were here for space science, Then go directly to the next part of space science, where we try to make this a little presentation, as I said, just so that our people can have it also set down just in 10, 15, 20 seconds. And we ourselves also, if you forget it and confuse these 4 or 5 names or 6 names of a shooting star in some time down the road, when you can go just back and watch this little video and have all the information perfectly as we have formulated it again. So, if you are here for space science, go directly to the next part of space science. We will do now the ECU tendon training. If you stay here and participate in the ECU tendon training, then it's very risk. Good and stable stance, arms next to us, hands on the fists, and we're doing a flat cane. The fists down and up. And now a counterfeit money check. Strong fist and bring them up and down. I'm going to use now a tennis racket. You can use also a dumbbell, but whatever you do it in accordance with our 3 rules. I'm going to name them now in a moment. The tennis racket is light. It has just around 300 grams, but a long leather. So I'm going to do Monica Neko, have the elbow in, take the lower arm and bring the arm slowly over to one side with 3 rules. First one, stop immediately as soon as there's pain. Second one, go only as fast as you can go with a little bit of effort. And third one, we don't want to overdo it. Take a rest if you like to. We just want to strengthen, not to exhaust. Last time. Now long arm out and over to one side. Back in the middle. And now with the other arm. Small arm in and out to one side. And with long arm. No, pass exercise. Last two. I'm using a sock. You can also use a t-shirt or a towel. Press onto it with good force, but not too much. And bring the wrist up. And again now. Again up. And last time down. And on the other side, press and bring the wrist up. Last exercise, just press with good force onto it. And on the other side, just press on. This was the ECU 10 chain. Thank you very much, and next time.